Assalamu alaikum, brother Bilal. It's Bilal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Walaikum salam. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sorry. I just have a quick question for either one of you. It's regarding your intuition. You know, one of the arguments that I've heard you brothers making um regarding the proof of there being a creator is that one of the main argument is the intuition that we have, that innately we can, you know, we know that there is a creator. So the question is that how do I put it? So innately that we know that we have a creator, and there are other things that we also know innately as well. So for example, one of my friends have told me, he asked me a question, the atheist friend, he asked me that, regarding the problem of evil and suffering, when a child, when he's young and he's suffering, obviously innately we know that that is wrong. But the question is, he asks is, but we justify it because religion says that Allah has a plan, there's a reason behind the suffering, so we need to justify it through religion. Whereas when we talk about Allah and that he exists, we have to undoubtedly, without question, believe without any question that Allah exists. So I'm not sure if you can understand my question, but it's regarding your intuition, it's regarding certain things, and like certain things we just have to, without questioning, believe it, and there are certain things that, we just have to accept without any proof. And yeah, so I'm not sure if I was clear.
Did you get the question?
Yeah, I think there's two questions.
Okay.
They're sort of tied, but I think you should answer the creation point about, I think, referring to the fitrah, that the argument we make, if we can call it that you don't really need arguments, that it's fitri, the belief in Allah. That's what the brother wanted. Because normally the non-Muslims will say, well,
Yes.
that's not, you just have to believe without question. That's the point he's making.
Well, the argument from the fitrah, the argument from intuition, is not an argument. That's not how we articulate it. It's more of an intellectual position where we like to take the center of the ring. So I like to use boxing analogies sometimes. So, when I used to train with my trainer, he used to say, take the center of the ring. I think he used to say that to me, because if you take the center of the ring, you have more dominance and authority in the ring rather than being on the ropes, right? Because you're on the defensive, right? Although my style was more somehow passive aggressive. I'll take the defense and counterattack. Yeah, that's my kind of style. Anyway, notwithstanding, take the center of the ring. So we want to take the intellectual center of the ring. And the way to do that is to show them, look, we're not saying there are no good arguments for God's existence. Of course there are. But what we're saying is that the default position intellectually is that you have to question that, instead of saying, does God exist? You say, well, what arguments do you have to reject God's existence? Because the idea of having self-evident truths is well known in Western philosophy. There are many things that we believe to be self-evidently true. So what does self-evident truth mean? A self-evident truth means that something is true by default. I'm not saying it's not going to change. Let's stand in the possibility it may change. But it's a default truth, okay? So, and default truths, they also share similar to the ideas of axioms or assumptions and related concepts. But self-evident truths are truths that are true by default. And they have certain features. Excuse me. And they have around 3 or 4 features that they are you want to just put your mic on mute if you don't mind, bro, because I could hear your breathing.
Sorry.
All right. So that was slightly off-putting there, but Habibi, yeah. So Jazakallah khair. So there are certain features of self-evident truth. So the first feature is that it is untaught. Okay. What does it mean by it's untaught? It means that you don't learn this self-evident truth from someone external to you. You derive or you acquire this understanding through your own introspection. For example, take the idea of cause and effect. I'm not talking about the nature of causality, but the fact that we have causes and effects. This you don't learn that causes have effects and effects come from causes at school, right? Or even the idea that time exists, that the past was a reality, the past was once the present. I never went to school and the teacher told me, Hamza, you know what happened 5 days ago actually happened. That time is real. that the past is a reality. It did exist. You don't learn that at school. It's a self-evident truth. It's true by default. You learn that through your own introspection and intuition. It's not from external information transfer. So that's one of the features of a self-evident truth. Another feature of a self-evident truth is that it's universal. What does universal mean? It doesn't mean consensus. It means that it's not a product of specific social or biological conditions. Okay? So for example, take the idea that time exists, that the past was once the present. This idea is cross-cultural. It doesn't come from a specific social biological condition. That we can't trace this idea only from, for example, a Kenyan village, right? No, everyone at different parts of the world cross-culturally appreciate that that past was once the present. Okay, so that's another feature of self-evident truth. Another feature of self-evident truth is that it's natural and intuitive. It's natural and intuitive. What does that really mean? That really means that it has greatest explanatory scope and it answers more questions than it solves. For example, believing that the past was once the present, that the past actually happened, answers most questions. It makes sense of our understanding of temporal depth of time. It makes sense of our memories. It makes sense of other people's memories. Now, for you to postulate the opposite, that the past never existed, then that raises far more questions than it solves. So these are the key features of a self-evident truth. Now, why have I mentioned this? Because the underlying concept of a creator, al-Khaliq, the creator, an uncaused cause for everything that exists, is self-evidently true. The underlying concept of a creator, not Allah with his names and attributes, fine, that's another argument, but the underlying basis of Allah's rububiyyah, his creative power, is self-evidently true. It's untaught, it's universal, and it's natural and intuitive. Why is it untaught? Because the idea that things require a creator, that a book requires an author, that a painting requires a painter, these things are not taught. You learn them through your own intuitive and your own intuitions and introspection. Also, it's universal, meaning it's not a product of a specific social biological condition or social condition. People all around the world, cross-culturally, irrespective of social or biological or environmental context, they know that a painting requires a painter, that a book requires an author, and so on and so forth. Okay. Also, it's also intuitive and it's natural, meaning it has greater explanatory scope and it answers most of the questions. It doesn't create more questions than it answers. So, for example, to believe there's a creator for the universe, that answers most questions. If you say there is no creator, then you have a problem. Well, how did the universe come into existence? It doesn't answer that question. And also, for example, if we said the book has no author, okay, well, that's a problem. Well, how do all these words come onto the book, right? And so on and so forth. It raises far more questions and problems. So from the perspective of self-evident truths, what we're saying is that it's true by default. Fine, you may disagree with it. You may think, here's an argument to go against it. Fine. But at least we have the intellectual, what do you call it? We're in the center of the intellectual ring, if you like. That we're saying, if you reject God's existence as a default, it's equivalent of rejecting all other self-evident truths that exist in Western philosophy, exist in science, and in day-to-day thinking and reality. Because self-evident truths have certain features, and the underlying concept of a creator shares these features as well. In other words, it's also self-evident truth. If you want to challenge that, fine, challenge it. But don't say, give me proof of God's existence. Now the onus of proof is on you. Because the one who rejects a self-evident truth, the onus of proof is on them. Because if someone came up to me and said, hey, Hamza, the past doesn't exist. It's all an illusion. The universe was created with all of your memories 5 minutes ago. Is the most rational response to say, no, you're wrong. Here's evidence for why the past is real, my memories, my appreciation of temporal depth, other people's memories, the history books, my calendar, so on and so forth. That would be an irrational position. What I should say to them is this: okay, where's your evidence? Right? So likewise, if someone rejects the creator, which is, as we've just discussed, self-evidently true by default, then the onus of proof is on them. So that's what we're trying to discuss. I know I tried to summarize a very long topic, but if you go to the Sapiens Institute website, sapiensinstitute.org/books. You could download the Divine Reality, and I think it's chapter 3, I believe. It talks about why Allah is self-evidently true, and it goes through these concepts in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
So hopefully that makes sense, brother.
Yeah, Jazakallah, that did help. I have read your book many times. It's probably my 4th or 5th time that I'm reading it. Every time I read it, obviously, the more questions arise. So I thought I'll come on and ask this question as well. Just very quickly before I go, you can answer it if you may. Just regarding what you just said towards the end, regarding believing in God, obviously I understand it is self-evident, it's universal. I've heard that there has been surveys and going on regarding like kids, they're born with that intuitiveness of believing in one God. But regarding that, just very quickly, that Allah has put it in us to believe in one God. He also put it in all of us that to acknowledge that murder is wrong, rape is wrong, all of these things. Similarly, what I was just saying before is we also know that when an innocent child suffers, that is also wrong. We all know that is wrong. But when we see it in the world, obviously, we know it's wrong, it's intuitive, but it goes against, what we feel. We're supposed to just blindly follow the fact that, okay, if Allah is, making them suffer for a greater good, that intuitive, it goes against that. I don't know how to explain it. My friend explained it better, sorry. It just goes against the fact that we just have to believe it, because our book says that Allah has he has that maximum of wisdom or totality of wisdom. So we just believe it without question. But it goes against our intuitive nature that it's wrong, that this is happening to the children. I don't know if I'm able to explain that part properly. But yeah, that's my final question.
That's a good point. It's wrong from our context that we understand the moral variables that are present to us. I agree. But can we say it's wrong that Allah allowed it to happen?
No, you can't. Of course not.
But why though? This is not blind faith. This is because Allah knows all the moral variables. He knows the full reality. We don't. Do you understand my point? Because look, there's a difference between absolute morality and objective morality. Don't conflate the two. So absolute morality is that, killing someone is always morally wrong. That's absolute morality. That's an absolute statement. That's actually wrong, because there are some contexts with certain moral variables that actually killing someone may be the right thing to do. For example, if someone had a machine gun and was spraying and shooting all of these children at school, and the only way possible to stop him is to kill him, then that would probably be the most morally right thing to do. Okay? So, and that is objective in line with that specific moral context. So we need to be careful about making absolute moral statements and thinking that they're the same as objective statements. They're not always necessarily the same. So when a child suffers, yes, we know that is objectively morally wrong. If a parent is making a child suffer, that is objectively morally wrong by understanding the moral variables present. But does that now follow that Allah is wrong because He's allowed it to happen? No, because He understands the full moral picture. Yes, it is objectively morally wrong from that perspective, how we understand it, for sure. And Allah is saying it's an evil thing to do. But in the grand cosmic scheme of things, can we say Allah is wrong for allowing it to happen? No, because Allah, our understanding of the full cosmic picture is everything is in line with the good, wise purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our worldview, that Allah allows everything to happen. There is evil, yes, there's objective evil and there's objective good, and bad things happen and suffering happens. And yes, we could say they're objectively bad based on those specific moral variables. But in the grand cosmic scheme of things, all of this is in line with Allah's purpose, wise purpose that is good. How that all fits together, we don't know. Okay. Because this is in line with the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. And it's not blind faith, because the way we understand this is through revelation, and the way to know Allah is through revelation. And we don't blindly submit to revelation, because we reflect on revelation, we reflect on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we say, when I read this book, I conclude that it's from Allah. And we also understand when we reflect on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there are various arguments, we can't expand upon them right now, that this book can only have come from the one who created the heavens and the earth. That is not blindly submitting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Jazakallah, that
Yeah,
does make sense.
Foundation for that. Jazakallah, bro. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.